Hey everyone. So I'm recording this on the afternoon of Friday, January 16th. And I just thought I would just debrief. Yeah, maybe for me, maybe for anyone else that would benefit from hearing this. Just kind of talk through the week. This was our first week back with students in January to start off this semester. And I'm a little exhausted, a little tired. Getting back into the swing of things while trying some new things. A lot of the topics that I was covering this week, I've got a 101 class, English 101, English 102, that I'm covering. And at the beginning of the semester, I talk a lot about AI, so that we're real clear on what's going on, how that fits into what we do as we learn to research and we learn to write. But I've been in the weeds on AI. And so I'm a little bit mentally spent right now. I think it's an important topic. It's something our students need to understand for sure, because it's such a significant change that's happening right now. And I just get the impression most students are just not feeling any immediacy about it. And that's fine. They may not need to be, do anything drastic right now. But the world is changing, and it's changing in significant ways. Over the last several months, I've started following Peter Diamandis in his podcast and his group of people, and their Moonshot podcast, and they're talking about what's coming in technology in the world and stuff like that, which almost always means AI. They're talking about AI, and they're very bullish about what's coming. And as I listen to what they're saying and I think about what that means for education, I'm trying to, just like everyone, I'm trying to figure out what the trends are, what the opportunities are, where the pain points and where the problems are going to come from. And I think absolutely this is going to be a really significant year in the development of AI. And it is we can't just wait around for it to pass by like it's a fad that's going to go away, because it's not. It's absolutely not. I have the opportunity next week to present as part of this training for people across the state of Arizona on AI. Me and some of my colleagues here at my college that I work at are in charge for this month's Lunch and Learn for the Arizona Women in Higher Education. And so I have the opportunity to talk about how I'm using AI. And as I'm trying to think through, what am I going to share? What am I going to do? I think it's a good opportunity to reflect on what's working and what's not working. I just finished this week of creating new lessons and new videos and new content for my students, and so it's been on my mind. It's been on my mind a lot. I've been experimenting heavily with Google Notebook LM. When it first launched, you could feed it a bunch of information and it could summarize it. And the highlight feature is it could create a podcast that could just talk about everything. And that's a pretty cool feature. But they've really added a lot to it since the last time I've really used it. They can create kind of like a slides, and then they can mix those two concepts to create videos. This is how they get explainer videos. They basically make a bunch of slides based on your content. They make this audio recording explaining it, and then they sync them up and put it together. And so it can create these explainer videos, which I've found really interesting. And so I've been experimenting with that a little bit. I've been recording some of my lessons and posting them for my students, but also I've been playing around with how AI might be able to support all of that. And so that's one thing I've been doing lately. So I use TwinMind, which is a detection software. Dictation, that's the word I'm looking for. Dictation software that can kind of, take down what's being said, so I can just set my phone as I give a lesson to my class, and it's not recording the audio, it's just writing down what I'm saying. And then from there, I can take that and either it can run some AI and come up with some notes and summaries and things like that. But in this case, I took it and I brought it back into Google Notebook LM, and then I said, all right, help write up a chapter, a lesson chapter for my students, which I was able to put onto Canvas. And then I was like, okay, great, use this content to make a video. And so even though I could have just recorded myself giving the lesson, it was interesting to see it interpret my lesson and turn it back into an explainer video, which some students found useful as I kind of surveyed and asked them about that today. It can create its own slides. It can do all these different things. And so I've been experimenting with what's working and maybe what's not as effective. So this is kind of where I'm at right now. What I like to do most when I'm using AI is I like to come up with an idea for what I'm trying to accomplish. And then once I've kind of worked the idea to the point that I'm ready to start figuring out some specifics, that's when I might bring in AI. So for example, I was working on a PowerPoint for a lesson this week, and I knew what I wanted to teach. So I asked the lesson planning feature within Microsoft Copilot to write up a lesson plan. Then I took that lesson plan and then I created a PowerPoint, and then I started using that content to create, the outline for the slides. And then I opened up Copilot within PowerPoint and I said, okay, help me have some information for this slide and this slide and this slide and this slide and this slide. And I went through and I worked with the AI, with Microsoft Copilot in this case, to take my idea, to create an outline, then to build the slides out. It didn't just do it for me. I was able to kind of work hand in hand with it. And then I used that to teach my lesson this morning. I like to use AI that way, where I'm coming up with the idea. Maybe I'm using AI to help find research, to find sources, to write something out that it's not super important that it's in my voice. But I can double check it and say, like, this is good enough. And then I can use it as kind of like a prompt within class. But then there's that other side where I'm able to feed it back into AI to take that content, put it back in, and see what it's able to produce, like these videos. And that's been interesting to see too, at the different levels of autonomy. Is it working as an assistant? Is it working to develop something on its own? Both have been very useful in their own ways. But so one of the things I did with my afternoon class today is I built out a bunch of these resources, and then I didn't tell them anything. I just said, okay, everything's in Canvas. Pick one of these sources that you want to use for today's lesson, and then I'm going to talk to you afterwards. And so, there was a couple different videos to pick from. There was a PowerPoint, the PowerPoint I was just talking about, the PDF, the different versions of the lesson. And they all just kind of like picked what they wanted to use. And then I said, great. After they had some time to look over, it's like, great, talk to each other about what you learned. And I kind of eavesdrop on their conversation so that they can kind of form their ideas and hear from each other. And then we opened it up back to a group, and I said, great, what did you learn? And it was interesting to hear the different points that they had made, and knowing that not everything overlapped 100%, because AI is rephrasing what I've done, and it's picking which things it wants to focus on. So not every source had exactly the same content, though it had the same core, right? And so, after we finished discussing the content, then I started, and this is a research writing class, so I was talking, we were doing some data collection, so I'm like, okay, I put all the different sources that we'd put on the, that I'd made available for them through Canvas, and then I wrote down, okay, how many students use this source, this source, this source, this source, and I wrote it down, and I had them rate how well it worked. What did you get out of the source? And I like to do this thing where I have them kind of like give me a grade based on where their thumb is at. Is it up? Is it to the side? Is it down? On how good something is. It's a sort of Likert scale. And so I do that, and I kind of like average out their scores, and I put that up on the board. So we've collected some data. Then I explain how I developed each of those sources so that they know, okay, AI was used for basically all of this to varying degrees. And then based on your scores, we're looking at how effective that was in teaching you. And what they kind of agreed is, okay, but maybe just using the PowerPoint and giving the lesson was probably better. So that was interesting. I love getting the feedback and hearing, and even though the world is just pushing technology so fast, it's not uncommon for my students to just be cool with slowing things down. It's like, you can just do it the normal way. That's fine. So that was interesting to hear from them today. So then I pulled up the PowerPoint and I started going through the lesson. But I find it all very interesting and fascinating. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, and sometimes it's hard to remember which way is up when you really start to use AI a lot in your work. There's this concept of the human in the loop, right? And ultimately, that's at this point that's definitely necessary for any sort of resources we develop or educational products we're making for our students. We need to be the human in the loop to kind of oversee the creation. And even though, these tools that we're using can do incredible things to create custom content for our students, we have to take the time to review it and make sure that it's okay. And I've been really impressed. There's very useful things, and those videos that are being made through Google Notebook LM, my students ranked it very high. The PowerPoint without the audio that it created did not rank high. The PowerPoint that I made scored pretty high, and the text was okay. So it was interesting to hear the feedback from my students. And we're in the thick of it. We don't know what's going to work best, but as long as we're actively trying to serve our students, I think that's the important thing. We're all just trying to figure it out. And so I just thought as I detox a little bit from the week and I just wind down, I form my thoughts and figure out, okay, this was a week of a lot of experimentation. I'm going to be sharing some of these thoughts with this group next week. What do I think? What do I think? And maybe me thinking out loud is useful for you. It's useful for me. So, how are you using AI? Is this helpful for you, or are any of these strategies helpful, or do you have something that's working for you? I'd love to hear it. So, thanks. And I don't know, maybe I'll make this a weekly thing. I'll talk to you later. Bye.